And we welcome in this morning the Auditor General of Pennsylvania, Eugene DePasquale, also the candidate, Democratic candidate for the 10th Congressional Seat. Good morning, Eugene. How are you?
Hey, doing great, Gary. How you doing?
Doing well, as always, and great to have you aboard this morning. We just had Scott on a moment ago, and now we got you on to talk about the issues, and looking forward to that. So, and we also want to remind people that you two will be involved in a debate/discussion. I kind of like this debate word, by the way, has become old to me. So discussion of the issues coming up on Friday, October 30th here from 7 to 9 on WSBA. And so glad that you'll be joining in that. With only 4 days before the election, I think it's really important for people to know who they're voting for and what the issues are. Not that we don't hear about them every day here in a country that we seem to kind of focus in daily. We have things thrown at us all the time. We have a blizzard of information. So let's get right to it this morning. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about the issues that are on hand right now for you. And I guess we start with the whole COVID-19 / economy. That's been the big one that people are talking about and how we deal with that. What are your thoughts on it as, a guy that would like to have this seat? It's how you would deal with this whole deal.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, I think we've got to work together. When I say work, meaning the medical professionals, the researchers, we've got to get a vaccine done as soon as possible and let the researchers, and we've got to put federal resources into that. I'm sure that's happening, but we've got to quit sort of fighting over who's promoting this vaccine. That we got to get the vaccine done, because I think with the vaccine, that's the quickest way to get everything back to as close to normal. The same token, we've got to try to move as quickly as possible. I know that we call these different stages, but the green stage in our local and Pennsylvania economy, where people can still stay distant, wear their masks, but try to get a lot of these small businesses back up and running again, where people can go and obviously be a part of commerce, but try to get these small businesses the help they need. And we have so many of them in South Central Pennsylvania that didn't get the help they need. Look, we saw, the first wave of help that came from the federal government were the Los Angeles Lakers and, some of these larger corporations were getting it. Meanwhile, there's smaller businesses that are still struggling just to put dinner on the table in South Central Pennsylvania. But we've got to make sure that we're still following those safety guidelines for the businesses that can operate. So get help to the small businesses, the individuals that are unemployed through no help of their own, make sure they can continue to get help. At the same time, work to get this vaccine done and is distributed as quickly as possible. Those need to be the priorities.
When you look at the economy right now, we had a great economy going. We turned it off in March. Obviously, it's coming back now. One of the narratives that we hear discussed on a national level is, well, it's benefiting the rich, but it's not benefiting the regular folk. How do you deal with that? I mean, how do you look at that whole thing? Is it benefiting just the rich, or is as you look around your area here in Central Pennsylvania, is it also benefiting regular folk? Your thoughts on that?
Well, let me mean. You mean pre-COVID or post-COVID?
Post-COVID. Post-COVID.
Look, I don't. Everyone's struggling. I mean, maybe people that had more money stashed away before COVID, or maybe a little bit more secure. But I think everyone is struggling post-COVID. So I view this as we're all in this together. Look, and again, yes, people that were certainly wealthier going into COVID, maybe they had a job where they could do something more remotely. There certainly are certain industries, like if you owned a hand sanitizing company, you probably made off like a bandit. But I think for the large part, most people in the country are worse off now than they were post-COVID or than they were pre-COVID. That's my take on it. I don't know too many people that aren't struggling, or at least at some level aren't worse off than they were before. And that's not here to cast blame. Obviously, we're all in this together. That's part of my frustration is why, we get into these arguments about masks and who's to blame for this and who to blame for that. One thing this thing has shown is to defeat this virus and to get everything back to normal, we're all in this together.
When you look at the virus, obviously, like so many other things in this country, everything has become political. It seems to be a political lens that we look at everything. How does that affect you? How do you look at that from the standpoint of a potential congressman? How do we get by that where we're able to start to look at things maybe not so much through the political lens, but through what's best for all the people lens?
Yeah, I don't know if you can completely get by it, but I do think that you've got to almost have your blinders on when you're doing what I do, whether it be as Auditor General or running for Congress. And what I mean by that is, look, there's going to be a lot of the noise on social media. Like, that's going to happen, and that's not going away. I think we've just all have to get accustomed to. That's going to be there. But at the same token, if you're really trying to get the country back to some semblance of normal, we're going to need a vaccine. We're going to need to get more, making sure we're getting clear guidelines of people washing their hands, wearing the mask, not getting conflicting information out to the public, and also be clear in saying, as science with this virus, viruses are is a living thing, so it's going to evolve, and science is going to continue to learn about it more as we go on, allowing that information to be clearly related to the public is critical. And for someone like myself, I've got to have blinders on to the noise that happens on social media and keep marching forward for what I believe is the right thing to do.
When you look at, and we're talking with Eugene DePasquale, who's the Auditor General, also a candidate for the Democrats for the 10th Congressional seat. When you look at the situation you've been in as Auditor General, what do you bring from that office to a potential congressman in the 10th Congressional District? What are some of the things that you've learned, some of the things you've done that you bring to the table?
Well, look, I know what it's, sort of the funny part of this is that, as an elected official, when you run for it under your party label. I'm a Democrat. When I first ran, Tom Corbett was the governor. Obviously, I was a Democrat. And I'd go to these, functions and people go, oh, way to be tough on the governor when I'd come out with a tough audit, and then Tom Wolf got in, and then the same people that were congratulating me for being tough on Tom Corbett were saying, why are you being so tough on Tom Wolf? But generally speaking, those were the partisans. The general public, whether they were a Republican or a Democrat, just appreciated that I was doing my job. And sometimes you can see the partisans will be talking about whether it be social media or even in the newspaper. But when I'm at a grocery store, when I'm just out and about, or even, back, when my kids were little at the youth events or stuff like that, they would just appreciate the fact that you were doing your job. And what I take from that is when you remove the noise of the partisans on both sides and you just focus on doing the best job you can, most people appreciate it, even if they don't agree with everything you do.
Eugene DePasquale, a candidate for the 10th Congressional District for the Democratic Party, is also the Auditor General of Pennsylvania, rejoins us here on WSBA. When you look at health care, Eugene, one of the things I was talking to Scott Perry about a few moments ago, and I asked him the question, Republicans and President Trump, who was then candidate Trump back in 2016, ran on getting rid of Obamacare. Obviously, they took away the mandate, and that's about where it ended because the Republicans were not able to get any package through, and they paid for it dearly, I think, in the 2018 congressional elections when a lot of people said not doing health care was a big thing. What would you do on health care? What would you do in trying to make sure it's accessible for all Americans, and particularly the people here in the 10th Congressional District?
Yeah, so there's three things that I want to put on the table. First of all, look, there's things I like and don't like about the ACA, so I would want to build upon the ACA, not get rid of it, the Affordable Care Act that some people obviously refer to by the other name.
Sure.
But I would say if you like your private insurance, you get to keep it. I want to be clear about that. If you like it, you get to keep it. I want to give everyone the ability to buy into Medicare so that they have that public option. And then for people that can't afford either, we'll enroll them into Medicaid. But again, be clear. If you like your private insurance, you get to keep it. Or if you're in a union or some other organization where you've bargained for a better health care plan, we're not touching that. And then you get people the ability to buy into Medicare. And that, to me, gets us close to 100% coverage while maintaining options for people that I think put some competition into the system to try to hold down prices as well.
When you look at things that you would make as legislative priorities, and again, we have a short time this morning with you, but we're looking forward to our debate on the 30th /discussion with Scott Perry, with the two of you to be /discussion, because I like the discussion idea better. I like to get into, it won't be like some of the debates that we've been seeing here recently, but one of the
worse than that one the other day.
It was a rough one. Yeah. Legislative priorities for you, the things you're looking at that have kind of gotten you to where you said, yeah, I want to run for this seat. What are the things that you're looking at if you were elected as the congressman of the 10th Congressional?
So we've talked about two of them, which would be healthcare and certainly getting this economy back up and running and dealing with COVID. So let's consider those two. And then the two others, I would say we've got to tackle the prescription drug costs. Look, as Auditor General, I've taken on this issue with these pharmacy benefit managers, these middle people that are just making hand over fist while jacking up the prices for people, certainly the cost of prescription drugs. And I do think we have to do a better job on our environment and climate change. The Susquehanna River is one of the most polluted waterways in the country. Our air quality in South Central Pennsylvania is horrible. Certainly, I hate to say it, it's gotten better during COVID, but that's something that I've clearly said we've got to make a priority by having more clean energy jobs, but getting those clean energy jobs manufactured right here in South Central Pennsylvania. We've got Voice Hydro. That is a great manufacturing facility, a great company right here. We should be doing more clean energy jobs as a way to move ourselves off of fossil fuels as quickly as possible so we can clean our air and clean our water while reinvigorating our manufacturing economy at the same time.
Immigration obviously was a huge topic when President Trump opened up his campaign in 2016, and obviously it probably has gone a little bit on the back burner here, yet is still around. What are your thoughts about immigration? We've got two things that seem to be coming up in the country. You either come in through the back door, or we come in through the front door. What are your thoughts about the whole immigration issue?
Look, we've got to have a secure border. There's no question about it. And at the same token, we've got to make sure that we're smart about how we're being tough on securing that border. We also have to reform our system so that people that are trying to get in and follow the rules are able to get in, so that we have a fair system and that people are seeking asylum. We have more asylum judges so we can get those hearings heard so that we can find out if there's any validity to their claim or not. So we can have asylum seekers as well, again, if they're truly seeking asylum, so that we can be that shining city on the hill that Ronald Reagan talked about. In the same token, look, we've got, obviously, we don't know the total number. It fluctuates. We hear between 9 and 12 million people that are undocumented here in the United States. We need to have a fair system to make sure that if we are going to have a path for them to stay, that they're paying back taxes, that we're making sure that, they haven't violated any laws. If they have violated any laws, making sure that they're making the appropriate payments or payment back to society for whatever those laws may have been, but making sure that there's some way to recognize that people that have been here for many years are in many ways Americans. And the same token, not separating children. If the child is born here in the United States, and obviously if they're now adults, we need to recognize they are Americans just like everybody else.
Let me ask you about, international relationships. That's something, obviously, as Auditor General, you don't have to worry as much about. But now, as you get into the Congress, if that happens, international relationships are going to be important. When we look at China, we look at our relationship with Russia, we look at some of the other things that are going on with terrorism. What are your thoughts about that in general, and maybe some specifics as well?
Yeah, one thing I've said from the beginning of this campaign is one area, again, I don't always like his style, but I do think President Trump is onto something when he talks about needing to get tough on China. I think he's right on that. I think they've gotten the better end of all these trade deals, and I think we've got to readjust that. So again, not always, people that have heard me on your show know that my style isn't his style, whether they like his or more that's a different style, but I do think he's onto something with that. So that's something that I certainly agree with him on. I think the biggest thing we have to focus on from our military and our international relations, we've got to repair some of those, because I believe international terrorism and weapons of mass destruction in the hands of bad independent actors are the biggest threat in the future. And we've got to adjust our military and our international relations and working with our allies and even our adversaries to try to keep those dangerous weapons out of those terrorists. I think that's the number one threat moving forward from a military standpoint. Certainly from the economy, trade is clearly the critical issue. And I do think President Trump has been onto something there when it comes to needing to have better trade deals.
When the final question, and it's always the one, the simple question, and I know guys answer it different ways, but why should people elect you over Congressman Scott Perry for this particular election?
Yeah, people have seen me as their Auditor General for the last 8 years, being tough and fair on a Republican governor and tough and fair on a Democratic governor. I think we could use that style of leadership that isn't trying to be blindly partisan one way or the other in the United States Congress to get this country back on track.
Well, Eugene, appreciate you taking the time to be with us this morning. We're looking forward to October 30th with our discussion between you and Scott on air. That'll be from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. on October 30th, which I believe is Halloween. I don't know if there's any irony there at all, but it won't be a scary time. It'll be a good time for people to be informed 4 days out from the election.
Should we be in costume? Should we have a costume on during it?
I don't think you'll need to do that, but we're looking forward to having you both on. Thanks for taking the time this morning. We appreciate it.
Hey, you got it, Gary. Have a great day. Talk to you soon.
Take care and good luck.